Hey, Shiran, thank you for joining me. I'm super excited to have you on board today.
Same here. I've been looking forward for that one.
All right, well, let's introduce you. You are an international author, the author of Unstoppable Business Growth. You're also a speaker, which is how we met, and you are a business transformation expert.
Correct. It's all about the transformation.
It's all about the transformation. And actually, we're going to talk about yours because that's essentially how we connected. We met at this speaking competition. And when you were doing your talk, that was so interesting how you decided to completely close your business, which was successful, and flip completely the switch and decide to go down another road. How about you tell us the story? Because I think that's the best story.
Thank you. And I'm really glad to hear that it's resonated with so many people, that story. It was a big journey for me personally to actually make a decision to even share such a story. You know, when you close a company that I built for 10 years with my husband, the first thing I wanted to do is just bury everything, make sure that that story never ever been told. But then I meet people like yourself that when I share that story, it's resonate, it's made an impact, and it's just giving me more and more reasons to speak up and share that experience and that moment of decisions that got me into where I am today. So yeah, so cut the story short, I had a company that I was running with my husband for 10 years. It was a gardening company. It was an amazing company. We done some major transformations multiple times. We won awards for those transformations against massive companies. As a small company, that was always a big achievement that we really enjoy seeing and like leveraging later on. But a few years later, I realized that me and my husband were basically have different dreams and different visions for this company that we never fully communicated. Now, when you grow a company, like that company generated more than $30 million and, we had 27 employees, amazing employees. And when you're in that situation, you have so much responsibility. And we realized that we kept going just because it needed, not because we both wanted to be there. And 9 years after we started the company, it just hit us. I remember that so vivid. We're just sitting in the hotel in Sydney after a big party that we had for all the executives of the retail industry. I remember saying to him, like, I can't, like, I feel like I'm in a little prison. Like, yes, the business is successful, but it's not what I want. And I know that I can't achieve what I truly wish for myself if I stay within this industry that I never liked. So yes, I like the people involved in my company, but that's where it's end, right? I don't like anything else beyond that. And he said to me, I don't like the direction we took. Like, I like what we do, but I don't like how we do that. I don't like the size of the business. And even if we signed on the same strategy every single year, what's happening internally is different. And from that moment, today I know that back then I didn't see it coming. Everything started to drift off, but not just
Mm.
in internally, also in the numbers. It's like in the moment you realize you're in the wrong path, everything externally start to change accordingly. If you like it or not, that's what's happening, right? Because you make decisions subconsciously that are serving your new vision that you just realized and not actually the one you're currently living in. So if you don't have a strategy that's matching that, you end up with big problems. And that's a year later, we basically tried to sell the company. And when we realized what entitled with selling it, and it's mean that we need to stay in the company, and there was a lot of things we didn't like in the way that it's moving forward. We just decided to shut it down. It was by far the hardest decisions I've ever made in my life because it's impacted so many people.
Mm.
But sometimes in life, you need to do a big cut and go backwards in order to go massively forward and in the right direction. So that's sort of done. That's what got me to what I do today. And I never thought that I will do transformation for companies, right? If I look
Mm.
at it now backwards for, even all the way to my childhood, I was like, everything pointed me to that direction of what I do today. I just ignored almost every single signal along that line, right? I
Yeah.
ignored all the marks that say to me, you should take that path. So I look at my experience of my company as what gave me the skills to what I do today. I don't think I would be able to help companies the way I help today if I didn't have that experience. But at the same time, now I fully aligned with everything my company does. And it's a different feeling.
Mm.
It just, you're in the right place, and you find yourself sometimes working till 4 a.m. because it's fun, not because you need to. And that's really a good spot to be. And
Yeah.
getting that decision was, as I said, so hard, but now it is very rewarding. So that's the story.
That's the story. When I read the book, how you start with telling the little story of how you had no idea about plants whatsoever because your old business was in the gardening industry. Is that correct? Yeah. And you had no idea. And you say, I killed plants. That's what I did.
I
And you
still
had to
kill them.
learn everything. You still kill them. Yeah. I mean, the signs were there, right? But there's a lot in your story that we're going to touch on because I think the idea of following the signs is super important in finding meaning in your life, which a lot of the listeners really are seeking. And so we might tap into that and then delve into the business side and maybe also flip a little bit, look at the other side of the coin and the employee side to see how to support employees and how to support employers in that meaning seeking, I guess, journey. So, I mean, of course, the signs are always there, but how did you come to the conclusion that there was no meaning for you in that company that you had? What were the signs for you?
I will share what was the signs now when I'm looking backwards, because when I
Hmm.
was in running my company, I didn't see the signs. Now, when I'm looking at it, I can see them. I can see how I ignore them. I see the same thing, by the way, in so many other companies, not necessarily in the same area as what I experienced, but in many other areas. So for me, one of the biggest alarms that I never listened to, the biggest signals, were every time when someone would ask me what I do,
Hmm.
my answer will be, I have a retail company. I have an e-commerce company. I would never actually share that that company is a gardening company. And the disconnect there between what we did as a company, the vision that I created for my customers, which aligned with them, aligned with my employees, but never aligned with me and what I loved, was always there in every time when I gave that answer. It's also when I realized that I'm in the wrong path was when someone asked me that question, but they did
Hmm.
not accept my answer of my husband is the one with the passion and I'm the one with the passion for business. They didn't accept that. They said, if you would do something that really aligned with you, you will not just make a lot more money, you will also have so much more impact in this world. And that's the moment for the first time, like in 9 years, I'm giving this answer. And the first time someone challenged me, that's when I realized that that was an issue. So that's a perfect example for a signal that it's in the day to day, in the way we speak, and we ignore it.
It's not only the way you speak, but when you say, you know, I just said it was retail. I didn't say it was a gardening company. I said, I'm the business side. The passion is my husband. It's also making yourself small, putting yourself in a little box. And that's a big tell. Like when you don't show in an expansive way, that's a big tell. And
Yes.
so what was the difference in vision between your husband and you that you think people should really talk about, as partners in business?
And in fact, one of the biggest reasons why so many businesses fail or close is because of the lack of direction. It's not because of the numbers, it's the disengagement between the owners to the company, if it's actually serving their life or not. I had a vision of taking the company to a massive exit. So I was building it to sell it to one of the big retail chains in Australia. That was the plan on paper as well. My husband, he really liked the hands-on, because he was passionate about the product. And that's something I see with a lot of founders. They're so passionate about what the business does that they holding it back from growing to what it can be as well, right? So it can go the other way around, not necessarily closure, but also for hold back. So he wanted to have the smaller company that we had before we started to grow it to that direction. So from his point of view, he did not listen to the alarms of, I want to actually keep it small and say to Shiran, hey, this strategy not aligned with me. but at the same time, I did not align with the passion. Like when I said originally with the company, I'm here for 2 years, I'm flipping it, I'm leaving, I never left. I stayed for 10 years because of that cycle, because of the rat race. And if I, like what I do today with companies is we put in the exit plan every single year. So every year we make sure that both business owners or even an individual, doesn't have to be a mix of business owners, but we make sure that we both on the same page with where we're going to exit the company, not just what is the strategy.
And
Yeah.
checking in every year to make sure that you're updating that. Yeah. And that's the thing that's throughout your book, a theme, the regular check-ins, especially with the employees. So your method that you've come up with, the CEO method, the E standing for employees. I find it fascinating how you talk about alignment, misalignment, of course, and how to support. And you say it's not a soft skill to want to have a perfect environment for the employee to thrive. It's not a soft skill to look at the psychology, to look at, the meaning that it brings to the employee, but also the exit plan of the employee. So you want to talk about your concept of alignment and misalignment a little bit?
For me, misalignment became the thing that I look at to find opportunities for growth in companies, but also to find where there is issues that are going to manifest later on in 12 to 18 months down the track. So alignment became the foundation before we even go into strategy. So for me, in any business course I've done, in any studies I've done, you have the goals you want to achieve and you put a strategy to achieve the goals. This is success. There is no doubt about it. I was successful. I knew how to set my strategy to achieve my goals. Perfect. What I didn't knew is how to align the people side, myself, my employees, and my customers to the strategy first before I
Mm,
go to the success. And for me, this is the biggest difference between successful and unstoppable. And that's where the name of the book came from, because you can have a successful business. I've had it, but it becomes something that can be stopped if the alignment piece is not there. So for me, the difference between alignment and misalignment is the difference between successful and unstoppable, because it's a lot easier to pivot, to make some small changes in life and in business, by the way. It's the same thing.
hmm
It's exactly the same thing. It's so much easier to pivot slowly or compared to completely shut
Closing a
down
business.
or closing a business, getting divorced, any other stop that you have for anything you do in your life, like quitting a
hmm
job just because you reached a burnout instead of planning ahead. So there is a big difference between being successful and stop it for being unstoppable, which is mean that you always live with alignment and pivot as you grow. And that's basically the foundation of everything I do today.
Yeah. And so what are the early signs of misalignment, for an employee?
Well, in my methodology, there is 4 areas where we look for to see what is the alignment of an employee to the business. But before I get into that, I want to touch on one thing from your previous question or from sharing about my book, is that there is a big difference between being a leader with the soft skills
hmm
and having it systemized in the business. Because I don't think that training people or managers in leadership is the answer. Because they can be amazing leaders, but if the business doesn't have the systems to support that coaching practice for employees, it doesn't really matter how good the leader is. The
hmm
system have to be enabling the leadership first. And that's, you know, everything I'm about is about unleashing that through a systematic point of view, and not necessarily from soft skills. Because soft
hmm
skills is something you can learn very easily, but if you don't have the system that support it, it will just fail. And that's why a lot of the time you will see people that they can be great managers in one workplace, but when they go to another workplace, it's a complete disaster. And it's not because that their skills changed. A lot of the time it's the systems. And when it's not the system, it's one of those 4 things, one of those 4 sub pillars I have in my methodology. The first one is passion. Not just in
hmm
we want to work in our passion. You don't have to work in your passion as long as you know what is the things that make you happy at work, that you don't mind doing those certain tasks, and what is the things that just drain your energy, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be on the level of hobby. It can also be just sense what is the things that make you happy and what is the things that not. And especially now when we have the era of AI, we have external resource that can do all the things we don't like, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it can be either finding another person in the workplace that can do those things. You can split roles or you can use technology. But the idea is to keep people doing the things that at least 80% that bring them joy and that make them
Yeah.
happy. If they don't do, like if in all your to-do list, there is 80% of things that you really don't enjoy doing, you're just not going to survive in a workplace. It's a waste of money for everyone
Yeah.
and time. The next one is your life goals. So what are the ambitions you have in life? Even simple questions. When do you want to buy a house? Or what is the ideal income you want to have in the future? Within the HR guidelines, there is certain questions that you can ask your employees to understand what is their life goals.
Mm-hmm.
Because if employee doesn't know what is their life goals, and you'll be shocked how many don't know
Yeah.
where they want to go, I think it's a responsibility of a workplace from a financial point of view as well to know a few basic details to make sure that that employee is in the right place and have the right career path moving forward as a result of that. So I can give you an example, which the third one is career goals. We're setting up career goals in a company, usually vertically. So it giving a limitation for an employee with how long they can stay in the company. But you can go horizontally and you can also go
Yeah.
hyper focus on specialization, that it doesn't have to be just one path. Because when an employee hit a glass ceiling, they leave. They just jump to another workplace. And if I look at some of the employees I had 8 years, 10 years, they never left because we will adjust their career growth map according to what they want in life and according to what make them happy. And the amount of money you save because of that and the amount of intel you generate into the improvement of your processes and procedures is just enormous. So the life goals is the third one. And the fourth one, which is the make it or break it. And I always say that the reason why we have 6 months probation period is to know if we understood that in the recruitment process or not. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
value compatibility. And what I'm saying now is not just for employment, it's actually for many other things in our personal life. But the value compatibility is almost like a ring of protection. And it's what explaining why there is one manager that is very happy in or very good at his job in one workplace and not in the other, is because there is different ways we operate in different companies based on our values.
Mm.
In many of the companies I meet, values to start with are just something on the wall or something on the website, and they're not something that integrates systematically to the way we operate. But values basically say what is the conduct of behavior we have within an organization. Same with our household. What is the values that we have that is bonding us all together, the conduct of behavior? So if we have certain values and we go to a workplace that doesn't match that, it doesn't take more than 6 months to completely fall apart. It just proves itself every single time. Is when you don't hire on values first, the relationship do not last long. And for me, that's almost like the base of everything. Because if you know what is
Yeah.
the conduct of behavior you want with your employees, and you ask the right questions in your process of interview, you will have the right employee to the right job. And when it's come to the profitability of the company, you just save at least 20% of them of their salary in the recruitment fee. So this is how I approach employee goals, obviously from a systematic way. So it's integrated into the HR softwares, it's integrated into the way that we do reviews, but it's looking at the people side and not necessarily at the system only side.
Yeah. And you do seem to, from reading the book, you put the values everywhere and you act on them everywhere. It's embedded in every process, in every conversation, in every interaction. And I think that's the difference when you say, it's a writing on the wall or it is actually being enforced in the company. And that makes a big difference because I think it also shows the culture of the company when someone says something and then follows through. And
Yeah,
that's a big part in retaining employees, I imagine, as well, the follow through.
correct. And when it's come to transforming a company, I've done transformation in my company multiple times and now in other people companies. And what make it or break it is actually the people. McKinsey says from their reports that 70% of business transformations fail. And the only reason is people, right? But we never start to set our strategy from people. We start from the goals. So it all comes together that if you actually embed those values into your system, like for us, every job description had the values and how you need to behave and perform within your capacity with those values. So how does it actually look like if you are a warehouse worker, if you're an IT manager? Doesn't really matter what you do. Those values look
Mm.
differently in the way you operate. And they become a metrics, something you can measure, something you evaluate. For me, the test to know if values are, or not just values, but employee goals in general, is strong within the company is in times of crisis.
Mm.
Because every single transformation I've done that involved sometimes firing 4 or 5 people from a small team and then hiring someone new, or
Mm.
alternatively, shutting down the company and going to the lunchroom and saying to my employees, I just gave you the last paycheck. I'm really sorry. Here's all the recommendation letter. Here's what you need to do next. And you have 2 weeks to figure it out. They all stayed. They didn't went back home. They all stayed and helped me close the company. And it took me a very long time to figure out why. I just didn't
Mm.
know why. It's only when I started to go into other people companies, I realized that what I was doing was so different than so many other companies. And I started to understand why. Why in that moment of crisis, they didn't jump ship. Why in the moment of closure, they stayed to help regardless if you pay them money or not.
What's the key there, Shiran? I mean, I know the answer because I read the book, but tell us.
Well, the key is to have the 4 things systemized to your everyday work, is to give them a purpose to come to work beyond. And I think for me, one of the biggest ones is once an employee know that you are aware as an owner, as a manager, of what is the things that are important for them personally, they know that even if you're going to fire them in the next round, it doesn't really matter because that's their time to exit the company. They know that they learned so many things that were aligned to their bigger picture that it
Mm.
doesn't really matter if it's ending now or if it's ending in another year or if it's ended up 4 months ago.
I think what it is that you allow them to really truly be seen as people, not as assets, as people. And as such, they create a bond with you, a connection that is deeper than the business itself. So, and perhaps they also connect to the business in a different way. And so when you do terminate, their contract or close the company, what I would imagine would happen for them would be, okay, well, this person has always had my back. They're not doing this to punish me or to be spiteful. They're doing this because that's the best for both the company and me. Otherwise, they would have found another solution, especially when you have a culture of we look at an evolution that's not only vertical, but also horizontal. When we specialize, they know that you will look for all the solutions before you get rid of them. That's a massive difference. So it's really about not only creating an environment that helps people thrive and feel, like they're part of something, it's also about an understanding that you have their back. There's a trust that's being built as well. And that's so similar, as you say earlier, like these skills, these methods, they're definitely applicable to personal life as well. Nice.
Yes.
Quick pause. I want to share with you 2 things that are so supportive of me every single day. First, with their medicinal mushrooms and herbal blends, Superfeast has been a game changer for me. It's helped me with energy, with immunity, with focus, and with stress support. All the things that I need for what I do. Second, Australian ceremonial cacao, my favorite cacao brand, to support you with your mood, emotional regulation, and clarity. And if you're a woman, it's great for your well being. If you want to try them, use the code WMW Health, all in capital letters. I'll put the links in the show notes. Now let's go back to the episode.
I think the biggest parallel to personal life, because I use that
Mhm.
skills a lot now with my personal life, is start to listen to those cues,
Mhm.
right? And I realized there is a few things happening in our body or in our mind when we are not in the right path. The first one is when you feel like you're outgrown the environment, the conversation, like
Yeah.
it's time to find something bigger, maybe join
That's
another.
how I feel about Australia right now.
Yeah, and it can be. I grew up in a very small town and I always felt that I'm choked. I just waited for the moment I could leave. Same when I moved to Australia. I lived in a very small town that my husband grew up in. I did not survive more than 2 weeks. I said, I have to get out of here. So when we feel that, that's mean we need to pivot. Otherwise, we will constantly live in that very small life that we know we are meant to something bigger.
Yeah, and it drains energy, right? So you also will
Yes.
see it in the way you show up, in the way you recuperate from a day, in the way you connect with others. It changes everything. Like you said earlier, once you've got a hint that you're not in the right place, everything shuts down.
Correct. It definitely feels that way. In the moment you open your eyes, you realize, hey, I'm in the wrong town. I'm in the wrong country. It just, everything becomes just not working anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we go back to, the companies and transformation of companies, you say most people don't know their values. How can you find your values?
I realize that this is a big problem. So from an individual level, I can share what I do for myself, and it will be included in another book that's coming up. It's actually a journal coming out in end of April, which will guide you how to find those things. So it's not just for the business owner; it's for everyone. But for me,
Hmm.
values. If you just type in ChatGPT, give me a list of all the values exist and print them. You take a highlighter, you start to highlight everything that resonates you, and then you go through that again, maybe a day after, and you start to cross things or you start to put them in groups until you end
Hmm.
up with 3 or 4 that really resonates with you. And it's an exercise that I do for myself on like a personal level every few years. Like I will take a weekend off and I will just take this print out and I will go and cross and highlight until I make sure that the things that are important for me in life is still the things that are important for me in life.
Hmm.
Especially after I closed my company, one of my biggest values I had is constantly learning and constantly evolving with my knowledge. And I really wanted to know if it's something that came from the need to be a CEO that constantly need to grow a company, or is it came because it's naturally me? If it's
Hmm.
and it is naturally me. I never been a good student at school, and I never been to university, even if I do teach there now. But I always liked learning. I spent so much time and money on learning so many different things. And it's because it's one of my values. I always need to take a theme for a year and learn something new.
Mm.
So that's how you identify value specifically for a company. It's not such a different process because it's the
Mm.
same principle. You just need to look at a more collective way of not just you as an individual. Because if we set the wrong values, like only customer facing, and not necessarily like what we want as an owner, we will have
Mhm.
clash with the people that we're hiring because they will not necessarily behave in a certain way that we want because we set those values based on what customers want to hear.
Yeah, and there might be confusion as well because at the end of the day, your values, whether you list them or not, you still have them and you behave accordingly. So you might as well make them conscious and align everything with it so that you're sure there is not this pull between customers and employers for the employees who are in the middle and have to buffer. And that would
Yeah.
be really tiring as an employee. I mean,
It is, and I think one of the biggest case studies around that area is what happened in WeWork and in Uber. It's two big companies that had a massive value issues that completely destroyed the companies. They need to rebuild values as a core thing in their companies, and that's the impact. I think that so many business owners believe that values are. I used to be in that way. Like I never believed that values are important until I started to see the impact of what they do when you really sit down and craft them and integrate them into the day to day. But for the first 4 years of my company, we had the values that were just not defined. Yeah, so it's a big difference once you do that process.
yeah. And talking about learning, your journey seems to have been a lot about developing skills in and maybe odd places. So you went and
Yes.
did some retail work, some sales, you went and did some volunteer work, and that's where a lot of your knowledge comes from. Is it just this idea that you need to grow that pushes you there, or is there more? Where does that come from?
I think the way I grew up was always thriving to be a center of attention. I like doing things that are big and impacting big. It's really hard
Mm-hmm.
for me from a really young age to stay in the small. Like even in my roles in the Scouts as a kid, I can be guide for one, maybe half a year, but after that I need to be the head of the guides, right? I can't
Yeah.
stay in that area. And I think if I look at all of my life, a lot of the time it comes because I always want to learn the next skills that will get me to the
Mm-hmm.
next role, but not necessarily because I want the next role. Does that make sense? Like I
Mm.
want to gain those skills to keep growing in that direction. And
Yeah.
that's the same in any other thing I've done in my life. If it's as a professional swimmer, if it's in my army service, if it's in my company, I always find ways to do the baseline really quickly, master those skills, move to the next one, move to the next one. And
Mm.
if I go back to values, I think it's really coming from that need to constantly evolve and learn.
Mm-hmm.
And even with my company, like I could easily just go and work somewhere and start a new life, but I chose to face it and figure out something that will benefit so many others so I can grow again in a
Mm.
different direction. It's just part of me.
Yeah. And it's also part of your method when you look at the exit strategies or the exit goals of the employees, and you split it into the people who are using your company as a stepping stone, which when I say using is not necessarily a bad thing, and we'll touch into that, or the people who really just are looking at stability and so using your company in that way. And I guess you would be more of a stepping stone kind of exit plan, but can you share a little bit of the difference and maybe people will recognize? Because I think that's also, a lot of people don't know values, but a lot of people don't know why they're in a company or what they're thriving for as well. I think that's super important.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, obviously, I read it in my book, but from all the people I hired in my life, I noticed there is two paths. And it seems obvious, but in reality, no one behaved that way in companies. So we have the graduation path, which means that this workplace is a stepping stone to something bigger that obviously I need to define, but it should be towards my career goal and my life goals together. It can be separated. And then we have the pension path, which means that I just want one place to be in for 20 years, come and do my job in and out and leave, which is usually people go and take more stable jobs in bigger companies. And to connect it to how it looks like in real life and not just on paper, I will share a few stories. One was when I had a few employees that moved to my company, which is a small company, definitely not stable, like it's still growing, it's still in the startup phase. Until you reach probably around 100 mil, you're constantly evolving a company. So choosing to work in any company that is below that revenue mark is mean that you're ready for being in a place that is unstable. So it have to be a
Challenges.
graduation path, right? And by the way, we can do graduation path and then go to pension. We can mix them both, but we need to know what it is when we go to a workplace.
Mm.
So that's one example of people come to work for you because they want that challenge, because they want the extra skills. And I hear a lot of small businesses always say, how can I compete with those big companies? This is where you compete. You compete
Mm-hmm.
of giving that extra experience of working directly with a founder, of having the extra mentoring, of seeing how business grow before it become a corporation. All of those things are the superpower of those companies, and they don't see that.
Mm.
So when it's come to employees, if you want to have that experience, then you're in the graduation path and you need to know why you challenging yourself with that. When I sold my first company and I wanted to have a bit of a break to get to know the Australian market, I just moved to Australia 2 years before, and I thought my first company was a fun exercise, made a little bit of money. Now I really need to understand, how do Australians shop, how they think, what
Mm-hmm.
is their behavior, but not just from the circle of friends I have. I need something bigger. So I took a job at Maya for like, I don't know, it was like $23 an hour. And I remember a lot of friends saying to me, are you crazy? You just like sold your company. You can go and start a new one with that money. And I thought, no, I need a learning path. I need a few years
Market
when I
research.
really yeah, exactly. And you get paid for that market research. That's the thing, that you get paid for that learning. So I learned everything. Like every day I would go to work with the lens of today I need to learn some Australian slang. Today I need to learn how they make a decision between something cheap and something expensive. Today I need to learn
Mhm.
how they change promotion based on different things. I will always go back with another learning initiative every day. So then you don't look at how much money you make. You only look at what is the things that you need to graduate with.
And again, you're aligning to your values there because every day you're learning. So, of course, you're going to be happy in your job.
Yeah. Yes. And so that's another example. And you also have, sometimes we feel like we need to go to a workplace that is going to get us to the right career path, right? Like, I don't know, I want to own a cafe, so I'll work in a cafe. Yes, it's true. But at the same time, you can gain a lot of other skills from other industries and then achieve that.
Hmm.
Sometimes you want to go and be a lollipop man because it's a good wage, because that will give you enough cash to actually open that cafe. So you need to understand, the biggest one is what is those life goals you have. And then if you need to do a sacrifice for a few years to work for something that is not aligned with the career goal, but it's aligned with the life goal, it's okay because you still know why you do that. So you go every day with a purpose and not with, I'm just going to work for the man, just going to work
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
boss. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. So, in terms of how you treat the graduation path takers and the pension path takers as an employer, because I imagine that you still need to make sure that through that exit plan that they have or that goal that they have, you need to align things so that obviously you don't waste, again, profit and money in training and all these sort of things. So, how do you treat those two types of people?
They both can become very profitable for the company, even for a short time. So
Hmm.
as long as we're both aware why we are here, it's still serving its purpose. Sometimes the only thing that employers need is someone reliable and that working in full capacity for the next 2 years, for the next 1 year. And that's okay because we both know that this is what we're here for. I don't think I had many people in my life that just gave me a 2 weeks notice. It's always been a lot before that. It's like, hey, I'm thinking on moving on. It's not about saving that because it's part of the system. Like, I know that I'm going to have you until you get a job in a bigger corporation as a purchasing manager. Okay. So I will give you all the skills you need, but at the same time,
You give me
you
all you've
give
got.
me back the
Yeah.
performance, the trust. So I know, a lot of business owners constantly complain that they can't trust their team, right? I hear it all the time
I
and
mean, it
it's
goes both
breaking.
ways, right? You
Correct.
can't trust your team, but can your team trust you to have their best interest at heart as well?
So if you want as an owner to go for a holiday for a week, to go for a holiday for a month, you need to trust your team. And the only way to trust them is to know that they have the same reasons to support your company as much as you do. And not just from a financial point of view. Because if it's only financial, that's why people moving jobs, you see it in sales industry, people moving jobs all the time because of extra commissions. If the culture is right, if we're both on the same page, if we understand the graduation path or the pension path, it's a lot easier to build and plan your workforce. And that's okay. Like I had people that came only for 1 year, but I knew that in that 1 year, they will give 500% of their skills, their motivation, and make sure that the business is profitable. Yeah, so that's why it's so important to keep them both. And I remember when my mom was quite sick and I needed to go on multiple times to visit her overseas, and I could be with her for a whole month knowing that my team got it, right? I had
Mm.
no doubt they done better than me. Me and my husband always used to joke that they perform better. We have better months when we are not around than when we are actually around. Is because they stepping up. They taking responsibility because they know what they're doing it for,
Hmm.
and that's why it's so important. So when it's come to is it profitable or even the other side, should I tell that to my employer?
Hmm.
Or will it bite me? And next round of redundancies, I will go because I might need to leave anyway in a year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big difference to have a relationship of trust and a relationship of fear. And I think the way you approach things is that constant communication and check-in, because obviously things evolve, your goals evolve, your life conditions evolve, and so you need to be able to have those conversations and to have the space for those conversations. And so that gets built also in the culture and in the values of the company, clearly.
Correct. So employee cannot trust with that information, and that information will damage their ability to grow in a company if they share it with an employer that do not see the business the way I see, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the business is not systemized in that way, that will play against them. So it's something you do internally. You need to do it for yourself as an employee. But the only thing I can say on that is that if you do that as an employee in a workplace that doesn't support this approach, it's still going to serve you, because in the day that there is another cut in a workplace, the last
Mm-hmm.
person that an employer want to cut is the one that know why they're there. Because you can feel it. It's just radiating out of you, regardless if it's systematic through the company or it's systematic through your own life.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter how you look at it, if you look only on the employee goal area and you do it for yourself and figure out a ways to connect yourself to the company, you know how long you're going to be there and why you're there, you will
Mm-hmm.
actually, as a side effect, will have a better choice by the employer to support you
Yeah.
just because of how you portray yourself in a workplace.
How do you create an environment that allows that trust from employees?
Well, all of that is covered in my book, but
Just read the book, by the
just
way. Let me
just
just
read a book.
show it to
But
everyone. This is
yeah,
the book.
yeah. So it is to insert it systematically. So employer that want to make their workplace basically focus on the fact that employees are the one that control the profit base because of their performance, because they are the one that actually speak. They're the one that decide if to give a refund or not to give a refund. They are the ones that every decision they make, every word that come out of the mouth is the one that control the profit. So once employers understand that, the only thing that left is to systemize it within the organization, which is mean you need to adapt your performance reviews. So once a year, doing one that is not about how you perform in your role. It's also the connection between what you do in life to the workplace. There is templates for that on my website. The other things that they need to look into is integrate the values into job descriptions and into roles, and also into the culture. We used to have award nights for the values, right? Like there is so many things you can do to introduce that and embed it beyond just the signs on the walls. So bottom line, my book covering how to systemize that in, because without a system, it doesn't work. You have to integrate that into the HR platforms. A lot of the time you hear, well, we have almost an epidemic on that. But managers that step up because that's the only path, right? Going
Mm-hmm.
vertically. And they're
Mm-hmm.
not a good manager because they don't have the soft skills, right?
Yeah.
But if they know that the questions they need to ask in the performance review are questions that also evaluate values, they become the right manager, no matter how you look at it, because the questions are just in front of them and they just need to ask them. So you integrate on that level that it doesn't even matter if a person that have the skills but not the soft skills progressing to management, because they will adjust into that. And if they grow into that culture, like, in the long run, it will be
Mm-hmm.
part of their DNA, right? It will be part of
Mm-hmm.
the way they operate in general. So it's all about the systems.
Yeah, it's all about systems, and it sounds like it's a very healthy approach to business. How do you pinpoint, either as an employee or even as an employer, if your business is actually unhealthy or toxic?
One of the reasons why I made that model, that method, is because I realized that every number a CEO see on the spreadsheets or on the reports started in one of those 12 pillars to start with. And it started at least 12 months before. So for 12 months, we don't see the results. And then when we see them, it's a result. It's not something we can change anymore, right? It's a fact now. So what I was trying to achieve when I was building the methodology is finding the connection between what I'm telling you need to do from a people point of view and how it's impacting the numbers. Because numbers at
Mm-hmm.
the end is what making a company sustainable, unstoppable, and healthy. You need to have the revenue and the profit in order to keep the company making the impact that you want to make in the future. So without those two things, there is no company.
Mm-hmm.
So I connected both of them with the numbers. And in my book, you can even hear, see, there is a list of pivot points and signals of how it really sounds on the ground when the first signs coming up for a break in one of those 12 pillars of people. So going back into McKinsey stats, if 70% of transformation fail, which cost us a lot of money, and that's because of people, we have to start with understanding what is the cracks that's starting with the people first in order to create the right transformation for the company.
Mm.
So the quickest way to do that is I have an audit on my website. It's 15 questions, and it will prioritize the area of people that need to be addressed. So instead
Mhm.
of say, well, this is very overwhelming, right? We have 279 pages of things to implement. No, it's designed to grow with your company. And if you do the audit, it will highlight to you what is critical. So go and fix that first. And then slowly you can transform all of your business to become like a muscle. And the outcome of that will be that every time when there is a crisis, every time when you're already faced with a big change that is external, that you didn't have control on that, the inside know how to adapt really quickly because it's
Mhm.
already made for that.
So if I try to summarize this, the idea of keeping a business healthy as opposed to a business that might be a toxic environment is really the ability to create systems for adaptation and for listening and implementing. Is that basically it?
Correct. One of the quickest exercises to even start with that, without even reading the book, without going into the whole methodology, is just implement a quick question that I used to ask with team members is what can we do differently today compared to yesterday? If you just start with that question, what is the things we didn't like doing yesterday? Maybe we can systemize them. Maybe we can change them because that's when you find the little pivots that need to change. We used to go through a lot of reviews, 1-star reviews and 5-star reviews with the team. What have we done wrong? Yes, grumpy customers. Okay, we can always put it in that pile, but let's learn from it. Let's figure out a way to make sure it's never happened to someone else. Obviously, there was a disconnect between what they see and what we see. So implementing those little things that are practice that you can do in stand-up meetings, that you can do even in the lunchroom on like a wall,
Mhm.
it's things that can really drive change and massive impact without implementing anything of what I have in my book. It's just putting everyone into that mindset of constant listening and pivoting and growing slowly in the right direction, almost like moving slowly versus in the right direction versus massive changes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important to check in again. That word keeps coming back to check in and to really look at the situation with honesty and then find solutions and be fair in those solutions too. Yeah, sometimes it's a grumpy customer, but
Correct.
sometimes it's just that the environment led to the customer being grumpy. So being honest and taking ownership and responsibility is super important. And I think that's also the hallmark of any kind of healthy relationships. So whether it's your relationship to your customer, to a partner, to a business partner, to your employees, to your employer, it all comes down to that, I think. There's so many questions that I could keep asking you, Shiran, but I feel like we are running a little bit out of time. So I'm going to kind of pivot now and go back to a bit more of the existential side of things for the employees. And in terms of, the story that you said earlier, something wasn't right and you stayed in the business. Why do you think so many people stay in situations that are not right for them, including employees?
It's comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's predictable. We know how it works. We don't need to move and make a big change. And I think in general, people scared of change. It's a scary thing to do. It's not easy. You don't know what there is on the other side. I've done a few big changes in my life, and each one of them was scary. And I think we just need to learn how to understand that if we decided that there is a need for a change, we just need to make it. The other thing is the responsibility. It can be from a business point of view. I don't want to make any drastic changes because I have 27 other families I feed. Right, not talking about all the external ecosystem that relying on that business. It is a massive responsibility, and you don't usually want to get out of it, or I guess labeled as a failure was a massive one for me, which is the outcome
Mm.
of making the decision. So there is a few of those things that playing together, and I think for every person it's very different. But if you go down to the question of why I'm scared of change, you usually know what is the things that tick for you, and you need to work on that part.
Mhm.
For me, the failure was a big one. And also the feeling of a loss. Like I worked 10 years. Why should I put it in the bin? It was like amazing company. And
Mhm.
not talking about all the 50,000 customers we had over the years that you don't like. There is certain products that we manufactured. So how do they even going to find those things? Luckily, someone did pick up the company and continue it and continue the legacy. So it's amazing to see that. But it was a big fear. What happened if
Mhm.
someone did buy it in the liquidation? So I think if you understand the core of the reason why you're afraid of change, you usually know how to make the change. It's almost like
Mm.
the
And
trigger.
I think likewise, if you understand the reason why you have this sensation, this feeling that you need to change, what's underlying that, and then seeing the cost of not changing, that also is super powerful, I think, in effectively leaping. When you see, okay, well, if I stay, this is the trajectory. And I might not know what it looks like if I change, but I do know what it looks like if I stay. And if you have this hint that something needs to change, you're going to be miserable.
Yeah, and you can see it in all walks of life. If it's in a DV relationship, if it's in a healthy relationship that ran out of love. There's so many different things. If I look at my life, the main reason why we made a decision to close the company is because we also knew that if we're doing one more transformation, that we can because we've done it so many times before, that will end our marriage, which is a red line for both of us. So you understand how it's going to look like if you continue in that path from the moment you recognize that a change is needed. And that's not worth the price, no matter what the cost is.
And no matter how scary it is to make the change.
And it is scary, like super
Mm,
scary. I think it took me a few weeks until someone pulled me off the couch, but it does.
that's normal. You were
Yeah,
like, nervous system shut down. This is too much.
it is. You sit down like, oh, what am I doing now? Who am I? Like, all these questions, but things always fall into place if you start to listen to those
Yeah,
internal voices.
that's so important. And I guess that's a great place to stop as well. Listen to the internal signals and voices. Give yourself the space, even when it's scary, to have that time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shiran.
Thank you. That was great.
That was great. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening. If this episode resonated, it would mean the world if you could like, follow, share, rate the podcast. It helps us get discovered and share the love. All of the guest resources will be in the show notes, including links, offerings, discounts, and anything you might need to go deeper. And if you want more tools, reflections, or behind the scene moments, feel free to follow us on social media or to have a look at womenmakewaves.com.au. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, stay true to yourself.